Imagine standing in front of a massive mirror and asking yourself who exactly was the very first person to ever stand on this earth. Who was the first human being to open their eyes, breathe the air, and begin the long journey that eventually led to you standing here today? This question has existed for thousands of years, and the answer depends entirely on who you ask. In this video, we're going to explore together how Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism each answer this question. Then we'll compare those answers with what modern science has to say. No one is judged here. No winner is declared. We're simply here to discover and let you draw your own conclusions. Welcome, let's begin the journey. Segment 1, the Islamic perspective. We begin with Islam. According to Islamic teaching, the first ancestor of humanity is the Prophet Adam, peace be upon him, and his wife, Hawa, known in English as Eve. The Quran tells us that Allah created Adam from clay, but not just any clay. Surah Al-Hijr, verse 26, describes man as being created from sounding clay from black smooth mud given shape. In Surah As-Sajda, the creation of man begins from earth, refined into form, and then brought to life by the divine breath of God. Adam was first placed in paradise, not on earth. There, he and Hawa lived in abundance and joy, but there was one prohibition: do not approach a certain tree. Iblis, Satan, who had refused God's command to bow before Adam, used this opportunity to tempt them both. They were then sent down to earth, but crucially, in Islam, this is not a curse. It was always part of God's greater plan. Allah had already declared before the creation of Adam that he would place a Khalifa, a steward and guardian, upon the earth. Adam was always meant to be here. Here's something that many people don't know. In Islam, Adam is not just the first human being, he is also the first prophet. That means from the very beginning of human existence, mankind was guided by divine revelation. One more fascinating detail: where exactly did Adam and Eve land when they descended to earth? Different Islamic narrations give different locations. Some say Adam landed in what is now Sri Lanka or India, while Eve came down near Jeddah in Arabia. There are also narrations suggesting they were reunited at the plain of Arafah, near Mecca. However, none of these locations are definitively confirmed in the Quran itself. Segment 2, the Christian perspective. So let's turn to the Christian perspective. The answer here is similar. The first ancestors are Adam and Eve. Their story is written in the book of Genesis in the Old Testament of the Bible. In Genesis chapter 2, God forms Adam from the dust of the ground and breathes life into his nostrils. Then God creates Eve from Adam's rib, a companion perfectly suited for him. The two are placed in the Garden of Eden, a paradise on earth. One tree is forbidden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A serpent tempts Eve to eat its fruit. Eve gives some to Adam, and together they disobey God's command. This is where a major theological difference between Christianity and Islam emerges. In traditional Christian theology, this event gives birth to the concept of original sin. The idea is that all of humanity inherits the sin of Adam and Eve through birth. This becomes the very foundation of Christian soteriology, the belief that Jesus Christ came into the world to atone for and redeem humanity from that original sin. Here's something fascinating for the curious mind. There are actually two accounts of creation in Genesis, one in chapter 1, and another in chapter 2, and they differ in detail. Theologians and biblical scholars have debated this for centuries. Are they two complementary perspectives, or evidence of two separate ancient source texts? This is a rich debate that scholars continue to explore to this day. Each perspective. Jewish tradition shares common roots with Christianity, both draw from the Torah, known in Hebrew as the Bereshit. The first ancestors of humanity in Jewish tradition are Adam and Chava, the Hebrew name for Eve. But there is a crucial difference in how Judaism interprets this story. Judaism does not hold a concept of original sin. Yes, Adam and Eve's transgression had consequences. They were expelled from the Garden of Eden. But this is not viewed as a sin passed down to all future generations. In Judaism, every person is born in a neutral state and is fully responsible for their own choices. Now, here's a story from Jewish tradition that very few people know about, and it's absolutely fascinating. In the Midrash, a form of ancient Jewish interpretive literature, there is mention of a woman named Lilith, who was supposedly Adam's first wife, created at the same time as Adam and from the same earth. Unlike Eve, Lilith refused to be subservient to Adam, seeing herself as his equal. She eventually left, and Eve was created in her place. Lilith does not appear in the mainstream Bible. She comes from ancient Jewish texts outside the canonical scriptures. Yet she has become one of the most symbolically rich figures in Jewish mystical tradition, and to this day remains a powerful cultural and feminist symbol across the world. Esmond 4. The Hindu perspective. Now we enter a very different tradition, Hinduism. Here, the answer becomes far more layered and complex, because Hinduism has one of the richest cosmologies in the world. In Hindu tradition, the first ancestor of humanity is called Manu, more specifically, Svayambhuva Manu, meaning Manu who was born of himself. He is believed to be the first human being created by Brahma, the god of creation within the Hindu Trimurti. Unlike Adam, who was shaped from earth, Manu emerged from the mind or very being of Brahma himself. This reflects the Hindu philosophical concept that creation is an expression of divine consciousness manifesting into form. Manu is also the central figure of the Manusmriti, one of the oldest law books in Hinduism, governing the codes of social life and conduct. Here is a truly stunning parallel. In Hindu tradition, Manu also survived a great flood that destroyed the world. A divine fish, believed to be the first avatar of the god Vishnu, warned Manu of the coming deluge and guided him in building a great boat to save himself and all living creatures. This is remarkably similar to the story of Noah in the Abrahamic faiths, or Utnapishtim in the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh. Another fascinating dimension of Hinduism. Time itself is cyclical, not linear. There is a concept of yugas, great cycles of cosmic ages that repeat endlessly. This means humanity has existed before, across previous cycles. And Manu is not a single figure. There are 14 Manus, each presiding over one great period. We currently live in the era of the 7th Manu. Segment 5. The Buddhist perspective. Now we come to Buddhism, and here the perspective shifts dramatically. In Buddhist teaching, the question of who was the first ancestor of humanity is actually not the central question Buddhism seeks to answer. The Buddha himself was well known for declining to engage with certain metaphysical questions he considered unhelpful to the path of liberation. For him, what mattered was not where humans came from, but how human beings could be free from suffering. However, there is a Buddhist text that does address human origins, the Aganya Sutta, found within the Digha Nikaya, and its account is unlike anything else. At the beginning of one cosmic cycle, luminous beings existed in a higher realm. They had no physical bodies, required no food, no sleep, they were pure light. But as the earth began to form, they were drawn down to explore it. They discovered a kind of earth essence, a sweet, creamy substance, and began consuming it. Gradually, as they fed on this earthly matter, their bodies became denser. Their light began to fade, desires arose, and slowly, in the Buddhist telling, human beings, in their present, suffering form, came into existence. This is extraordinary because in the Buddhist worldview, there is no single definitive first human. The process was gradual, unfolding across one of countless cosmic cycles without beginning or end. And remarkably, this way of thinking is actually the closest of all these traditions to the principles of modern science. No sudden origin, no single starting point, but a long, gradual, unfolding process. Segment 6. The Scientific Perspective. So, let's look at what science has to say, and as usual, the answer is complex, highly detailed, and continues to evolve. Human evolution. The theory of evolution, first formulated by Charles Darwin in the 19th century and continuously refined ever since, tells us that modern humans, Homo sapiens, did not appear suddenly. We evolved gradually over millions of years. Let's clear up one of the most widespread misconceptions. Humans did not evolve from monkeys or the apes that exist today. What is actually true is this. Humans and great apes, such as chimpanzees and gorillas, share a common ancestor that lived approximately 6 to 7 million years ago. That creature was neither a monkey nor a human, it was something in between, and it is now extinct. Homo sapiens, which means wise human, is estimated to have first appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago. These are the beings who eventually spread across the entire globe. Mitochondrial Eve and Y-chromosomal Adam. Now, this is perhaps the most breathtaking part of what science has discovered and also the most frequently misunderstood. Scientists discovered through the analysis of mitochondrial DNA, which is DNA passed exclusively from mother to child, that every human being alive today can trace their maternal lineage back to a single woman who lived in Africa approximately 150,000 to 200,000 years ago. Scientists call her mitochondrial Eve. On the paternal side, there is Y-chromosomal Adam, a man estimated to have lived between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago, who is the patrilineal common ancestor of all men alive on Earth today. But, and this is critically important, they were not a couple. Mitochondrial Eve and Y-chromosomal Adam did not live in the same era. They may have been separated by tens of thousands of years. They are not the scientific version of Adam and Eve. They are simply the last common nodes in an enormously complex family tree, the points where all surviving lines of descent finally converge. The out of Africa theory. Genetic and fossil evidence consistently points to Africa as the birthplace of Homo sapiens. Around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, a group of modern humans began migrating out of Africa, spreading into Asia, Europe, Australia, and eventually the Americas. What this means is both humbling and unifying. Every human being on Earth today, regardless of skin color, language, or culture, is descended from the same ancestors in Africa. In the most literal, genetic sense, we are all family. Segment 7. Comparison and Reflection. After exploring all of these perspectives, let's step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture. The differences are clear. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism point to Adam and Eve, directly created by God. Hinduism points to Manu, born of Brahma. Buddhism gives no singular name, but describes a gradual process. Science points to mitochondrial Eve and Y-chromosomal Adam, who weren't even contemporaries. But look closer, and something remarkable emerges. First, nearly every tradition agrees that humanity is not an accident. There is a process, a meaning, a dignified origin. The difference lies only in who or what initiated that process. Second, science and religion do not have to be at war. Many scientists are deeply religious. Many theologians fully accept the theory of evolution. Some see evolution itself as the process through which God created humanity, gradually, masterfully, over immense spans of time. What matters is that we don't force one perspective to silence the other. And third, science itself has not finished answering. New fossil discoveries and new genetic analyses continue to refine and reshape our understanding. Science is not a rigid dogma, it is a living, evolving pursuit of truth. Segment 8. Closing. So, who was the first ancestor of humanity? The answer depends on where you're looking from, and perhaps that is something beautiful. That a question as old as human civilization itself can still make us pause, reflect, and feel wonder. One thing is certain, across all traditions, across all perspectives, one message rings true. We are not strangers to each other. We all come from the same source. Whether that is Adam, shaped from clay by God, Manu, born from the mind of Brahma, luminous beings who descended from the cosmos and became human, or ancestors who walked the African plains hundreds of thousands of years ago, and whose journey brought us here. We are one. And perhaps that is the most important thing to remember. If you have a different perspective, or if there's a tradition we didn't cover that you'd like to add, write it in the comments. Respectful, thoughtful discussion is the best way we learn together. If you found this video valuable, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.